Hey guys, Jake the Sports here, and today I'm back with episode 4 of Jake's Takes. Basically me covering college football content, at least for now. I'm gonna try to do a little NFL content in the future, especially playoff stuff. Once the college football season wraps up and the national championship is over, all the bowl games conclude. I'll definitely get into some NFL stuff, but yeah, we're still sticking with the college football season right now, and um, at the time I'm recording this Friday, it's been about 3 days since the college football playoff released its what would it be, third ranking, I believe, their third ranking show of the year, and yeah, it represents what the week 15 poll, I guess, if you want to call it that. Yeah, there's been, it, the trend really has continued, of there being a lot of change within that 8 to 25 range, but really no change at all when it comes to um, the cream of the crop, the elite teams so far this year. And I think a lot of people have said it, and I kind of agree with it. I don't think much is really going to change unless we see a dramatic upset. Um, unless something bizarre happens, like Notre Dame gets crushed by Clemson in the ACC championship game, Ohio State drops one, um, Florida dominates Alabama. Unless something crazy like that happens, I really do think it's just going to be Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, Ohio State as your four playoff teams this year. I know it's really not the four a lot of people wanted to see, especially with so much chaos going on this year. A lot of people wanted to see Cincinnati in this year. I'm going to tell you guys why that's not going to be happening. A Group of Five team will not get in this year, and it's pretty much. The playoff committee basically eliminated Cincinnati, based off their latest poll. So yeah, let's get right on into it. Yeah, I'm just going to be going over the rankings. Notre Dame's not playing this week, so we'll cover some big games. But again, there's not, I don't think at least there's a top 10 matchup this week, and we won't really see any of the big matchups um, until conference championship weekend, and I'm going to be making another episode for that. So there you go. All right, so this episode's not going to be too long. Like I said, I'm really going to be mainly going over the rankings and telling you guys the big games that are going to be going on this weekend, but I'm mainly going to be focused on the rankings because there's a lot to unpack and uncover here. Um, Again, no movement between 1 and 6. There was a movement between 7 and 8, um, and 9 for that matter. But like I said, for the most part, it's been a ton of teams moving into the top 25 and a lot of coming out, and then just some movement up and down, in the teens area. So let's get right on into it. Let's start at 1, I guess. So this has been the norm for the past 3 weeks now. Alabama 1, Notre Dame 2, Clemson 3, Ohio State 4, Texas A&M 5, Florida 6. It's been that way for the past 3 weeks, and I, I honestly I don't see it changing for the rankings going into the conference championship games. Obviously, once the conference championship games are over, it's definitely going to change. Notre Dame's going to play Clemson, um, and also Florida will have played Alabama. So those are two games that'll dictate where the teams go after that. Um, but yeah, I think I think the committee's made it clear that between 1 and 6, there's a huge difference between those teams and the rest of college football, pretty much. Um, as Cincinnati was the only team in the top 7 the only team in the top 7 to change positions, and they moved down a spot, and I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, really no change here. Again, I don't really have a problem with this. I don't Personally, I'm of the belief that if it's two teams have played each other, I'm looking at Texas A&M and Florida here. I'm of the belief that if Texas A&M beat Florida and they have one loss, and Florida lost to Texas A&M and they have one loss, they've played basically the same amount of games, similar schedule. I'm of the belief that the team that beat the other team would be ahead of them, which would be Texas A&M because they beat Florida. But I mean, let's just be honest here. That was a fluky win. Texas A&M, I'm just going to be honest, is not the fifth best team in the country. I don't even know if they're the eighth best team in the country. I mean, if you matched I'll give you a rundown right now. If you matched Texas A&M up against Alabama, Alabama would crush them. I think Notre Dame would beat them soundly. Same with Clemson and Ohio State. I don't think those games would be particularly close. Then you look at Florida. And let's just be honest, the only reason Florida is behind Texas A&M is because Texas A&M beat them earlier in the season. If Texas A&M and Florida played right now, Florida would win, and there's no doubt in my mind. There's really just not. Texas A&M has just struggled against these bad teams. They beat an LSU team by 13. Barely beat a terrible Auburn team. An Auburn team that should have lost to Arkansas. The refs bailed them out there, but that's a story for another video. Texas A&M is just not a great team. They're just not. And if Texas A&M played ISU right now, I think ISU would beat them. Same goes with Cincinnati. Same thing goes with UGA. Miami, I think that's a give or take. I think they'd lose to Oklahoma. I think they could lose to Indiana. I think that'd be another 50-50. And I give the slight edge to Coastal Carolina. I mean, you'd have to go all the way down to number 14 for me to confidently say that I think Texas A&M would win that game. That's concerning if you're an Aggies fan. The Aggies are not the fifth best team in the country. And again, the only reason they're up there at 5 is because they have that win over Florida. And Florida keeps on winning. And you can't put Texas A&M below Florida. So you see where that's coming in. I think, and honestly, if they didn't have the Florida win, I think they'd be right about where Miami is. Miami's sitting there with that one lone loss, but they're all the way back at 10. I think that's right about where Texas A&M would be, but again, that big win over Florida kind of props them up there at number 5. And, you know, I'm all for getting a new team in the playoff, but I'm just going to be honest. If whoever the Aggies play in the playoff, if they make it, they're just going to get shut out. They're going to get blown out. It's going to be embarrassing. You know, they will have never gotten off the bus. So those are my thoughts on Texas A&M. They're a pretender this year. They just are. I mean, they lost by 28 to Alabama. What do you want me to say? I don't know what to say. Is my answer to that question. I don't know what to say. Let's see here. Again, Florida at number 6. They didn't change at all. And here's the big thing. So last week it was from 7 to 10. It was 7 Cincinnati, 8 Georgia, 9 Iowa State, and 10 Miami. That changed dramatically this week as the former number 9 Iowa State team moved up 2 spots past Cincinnati and past Georgia to move up to number 7. So Cincinnati moves back 1 and Georgia moves back 1. And Miami just stayed the same. And I just, honestly, I don't love that they put them there. I don't love that they put Iowa State there. I get it. I get where the playoff committee is coming from on this. Iowa State dominated a, not terrible team. I mean, West Virginia, I think, has the best defense in the Big 12. and they scored 42 points on them. But I don't think that results in you moving that team up 2 spots, if that makes any sense. Um, I again, I don't think I think Georgia should have moved back. I like that because I don't think Georgia's even a top 10 team. I would have Oklahoma and IU along with Coastal Carolina. All three of those teams, in my opinion, should be above Georgia. I don't know why Georgia's so high. They've been looking at margin of loss, but I mean, Georgia's just got dominated by two of those teams. I know they're in the top six, Alabama and Florida, but they got crushed. So, say what you want, but I don't know. I don't think Georgia should be that high. I like that they moved back, but I don't like that you moved Cincinnati back one. I think Iowa State's a great team, but I don't think the committee's looking at the whole season here. I think they've just blocked it out of their minds that this team lost to a group of five team. This team lost to Louisiana Lafayette. So, I don't know. I don't know what to say. I mean, if Iowa State makes it in the playoff, they'll be the first team to ever get in with two losses, let alone being the first team to get in there with a group of five loss. No team has ever gotten in with a group of five loss. And it really wasn't even close. I mean, it just wasn't close, that game. So I think they're just forgetting stuff here. Because Cincinnati, I think, should be ranked ahead of Iowa State. I think Coastal Carolina, for crying out loud, beat ULL, and ULL beat Iowa State. And Coastal Carolina's 6 spots behind Iowa State? What? Makes no sense. So, I don't know that one. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I think the committee's made a clear message here that a group of five team is not getting in this year, and really they won't get in any year. I mean, if a group of five team is not getting in this year, they're not getting in any year. Iowa State moves up past Cincinnati. Cincinnati didn't even lose. They didn't even have a bad win. They just didn't play. I don't think you should move a team down for not playing. So I really don't see where they're coming from on that one. And again, Iowa State, I know they had a dominating win, but West Virginia is not the best team in the world. And again, they have 2 losses. One of them's to a group of five team that you're putting over. This Iowa State team lost to a group of five team, and they're putting them over a group of five team. Makes no sense. Other than that, nothing really besides that in the top 10. Just those 3 teams, Iowa State, Cincinnati, Georgia. And like I was saying, the committee's not going to put a Cincinnati or a Coastal Carolina in this year. It's just not going to happen. You look here. And them, this is a huge message by the committee here. So they put Iowa State over Cincinnati. There's nothing at this point Cincinnati can do to leapfrog Iowa State. If Iowa State wins the rest of their games, I don't care if they win it by 1, I don't care if they win it by 2, or even 15, it doesn't matter. As long as Iowa State wins the rest of their games, they're not gonna fall behind Cincinnati. Cincinnati is not going to rise up unless a team in that top 6 area loses dramatically, or Iowa State loses. And if Iowa State just wins out, Cincinnati's not going to move up. It's just not going to happen. There's no way Cincinnati's getting in. Because at this point, you have OU and Iowa State. Those teams are going to be playing in the Big 12 championship, one of those 2 teams, if it comes down to that, they're going to win the Big 12. Let's say Iowa State wins the Big 12. And it's left up to, let's say it was Alabama, Clemson, the number 3 team, let's say it was Notre Dame. Let's say somehow Ohio State loses the game. You got one spot left. Let's say Texas A&M loses a game. They're out of it. Now it's down to Iowa State and Cincinnati. I can guarantee you they will put Iowa State in, without a doubt in my mind. And the bias is just unreal at this point, and I'm getting sick and tired of it. Coastal Carolina has the same amount of top 25 wins as Iowa State. Makes no sense. Iowa State, and they say, well, Coastal Carolina's barely beat teams. Iowa State's done the same thing. So I don't know where they're coming from on that. The only reason they're above and the only reason they moved up is two words. Power 5. Power 5 bias. And again, the committee has made a huge statement here. A group of 5 team will not be getting in because Cincinnati's not going to move up past Iowa State. They have, one game left against Tulsa, which is no longer, or I guess they are in the top 25, but they're the number 24 team. And if this Cincinnati team beats Tulsa, Tulsa's no longer going to be in the top 25. So it really doesn't even matter. So there's really no way, Cincinnati can't make anything up anymore. It's the end of the season now. Cincinnati couldn't afford to lose a spot like that, and now that they're behind Iowa State, they're not going to be able to catch up unless Iowa State loses. So if you're Cincinnati, you just got to pray that Iowa State loses. You just got to pray that Iowa State loses. That's all you got to do. And even at that point, I think Oklahoma could still leapfrog you. I think one of these teams could still leapfrog you, because if Iowa State did it, why can't any of the other teams? Makes no sense to me. I'm moving on. And again, I don't agree with it. I just don't. I think Cincinnati's the 7th best team in the country. And I think there's a large gap between Cincinnati and the top 6, and Cincinnati along with the top 6, and everyone else. But in the committee's eyes now, I think it's pretty clear that there's 2 groups here. There's the top 6, and there's everyone else. It was originally the top 7. Cincinnati moved down. Now it's the top 6. It's as simple as that. Iowa State is not the 7th best team in the country. I'd put them at 8 or 9, possibly 10. I think Miami should be higher. I think Cincinnati should move up 1. I think Indiana should be way higher. And I think Coastal Carolina should be a lot higher. I don't know what the committee's thinking. I just don't. So, outside the top 10, again, OU is number 11. Indiana is number 12. Coastal Carolina is number 13. Northwestern is number 14. USC is number 15. Really not much change there. USC moved up a lot. I think that's just because a lot of teams lost, and again, they're a Power 5 team that's still undefeated. And I think USC is around the 15th best team in the country. I don't blame them for that. I just don't know why it took them this long to move up. Makes really no sense to me, but again, I agree with their ranking as it stands. Northwestern, I don't think they're the 14th best team in the country. I think they should be a little lower, but it's Northwestern. I don't really care. Coastal Carolina, too low. Too low. I've seen a lot of people think that this was the sweet spot. It wasn't. They just took BYU's place. It mind boggles me. This is what it should be from 7 to 15 or 7 to wherever. It should be Cincinnati. It should be Cincinnati. Then You know what it should be? Yeah, Cincinnati. Then Indiana. So it should be 7 Indiana or 7 Cincinnati, 8 Indiana, 9 Coastal Carolina, 10 Miami, 11 OU, 12 Iowa State, or sorry, flip OU and Iowa State. I'd have Iowa State at 11, OU at 12, Georgia at 13. The rest of them don't really matter. Coastal Carolina should be around 8 or 9. Personally, I'd have Cincinnati 7, Indiana 8, Coastal Carolina 9. Coastal Carolina needs to be in the top 10. This team needs to be taken seriously. I know BYU's not an amazing team, but they got the job done. They won the game, and it's a top 20 win. They also won over a top 20 team whose only losses to them, who's 9-1 and has a win over Iowa State. This team needs to be This team needs to be taken seriously. Please. But it's not going to happen. Coastal Carolina, there's no chance of them making the playoff. They're going to try to make a push for the New Year's Six. At this point, I don't think it's realistic that two Group of 5 teams are going to make the New Year's Six. I think BYU was the real shot at that, and they lost to Coastal Carolina. I mean, BYU's chances at the New Year's Six are done, but maybe Coastal Carolina does something impressive. I mean, especially if they beat ULL again, that'll be huge. But we'll just have to wait and see. I don't really know. But yeah, not much movement from 10 to 15. Again, Coastal Carolina and Indiana, way too low. Those teams should be higher. It's all about the brand name. 16 Iowa. I didn't understand why they put Iowa in the top 25 in the first poll. I think it was the first poll. They had them 24 or 25, and they were 3-2. But this Iowa team has looked better and better. I'm starting to buy into them. I think they're a legit team. I know they're 5-2, but they've really made a huge comeback this year. And congrats to the Hawkeyes. I think they are the 16th best team in the country. Again, UNC too low. They should be behind Texas. BYU. I think BYU's around the spot I'd have them. I think they're in a good spot. ULL at number 19. I think ULL is a little too low. I'd like to see them at 17 or 18. I think 19 is just a wee bit too low, but not going to complain. Texas A&M is actually ranked. It's like they just forgot to include Texas on the last poll. I think 20 is fine, but I think North Carolina should be behind Texas. I think UNC is too high. Voice crack. Put voice crack in the comment section if you made it this far in the video. Thank you. But yeah, I think Texas should be above UNC, but I like their placing at 20. Colorado, I think that's a good spot for them. But again, I think they should be a lot higher. You look at the games and the teams they've played the exact same way USC has. The only reason USC is higher is because their name is USC. I think Colorado should be higher. I think right around 16 or 17. Right with USC, because these teams have looked eerily similar. So, that's my thoughts on them. Oklahoma State, I don't think they should be in the top 25, honestly. They're not a good team. I think they're a bad team. Way too inconsistent. NC State, again, NC State's just one of these teams that, NC State's NC State is a mediocre team in the ACC. They play so many mediocre teams that they get more wins than they really should have. And now and again, you'll see one of these mediocre ACC teams crack the top 25. Knowing NC State, they'll probably just lose a game and drop back out. But I think, wait, are they done? I think they're actually done for this year. Yeah, they're done for the year. So that's actually pretty interesting. But yeah, the Wolfpack, they'll obviously play in a bowl game. How they'll do, I don't know. But yeah, their season is over. But again, just a mediocre team that happened to crack the top 25. Then you got Tulsa at 24. I think that's fine. I think Tulsa should be around that range. And Missouri at 25. I personally would have liked to see Wisconsin there over Missouri. I think Wisconsin's the better team. I know the record at 2-2 is just very interesting and weird, and really quirky, to be honest. To have a top 25 team be 2-2, about 15 weeks into the season, but I think Wisconsin should be in the top 25. I mean, they played it close with Indiana and who else? Northwestern, two top 15 teams. So I think you should have them in the top 25 just for that. I know their wins weren't great, but I mean, they played it close with the two teams they played. And from what I've gathered, the committee loves these close losses. So I meant to say close losses. They've had close losses against Northwestern and Indiana. And the committee loves close losses, so I don't know why they don't have them in there. But, yeah, I mean, this playoff committee is just a joke, to be honest. I really don't know where they're coming from. There should be no reason Cincinnati moves down when they played no one. Just no reason. There's no reason UGA should be in the top 10. There's no reason that CCU, Coastal Carolina, shouldn't be in the top 10. Same with Indiana. Why is UNC above Texas? It just doesn't make any sense. And I think everyone can agree that the BCS system was not good. I don't think a lot of people like the BCS system. But I think what we're missing here is that people didn't like one aspect of the BCS system. And that aspect was that they only allowed two teams in the championship game. It was just a championship game. There were no 3 and 4 seeds in there. It's getting to the point where this committee's a joke. This is what I'd like. I'd like to see, even if you just keep the 14 playoff, but go back to the old BCS system that we had, where it was a group of people combined with computer statistics or whatever AI, I don't know what the heck they used, but it worked. I think they really nailed it on a lot of these picks. That the committee, when it's, all human, it's all the eye test, it's all from their perception, it warps this. And I know everyone's going to have their opinions now and then, but the committee's rankings, to be honest, have just gotten worse and worse. Not only this year, from week 1 to 15, but throughout their entire history. In my opinion, at least. But that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't really know what else to say here. I don't agree with the rankings. Personally, I think I'm of the belief that you should have 6 teams in a playoff. I think a 16 playoff would be perfect. I don't agree with the 18 playoff anymore, but I wouldn't hate it, but I just don't think it's the perfect sweet spot. I think 6 teams with 1 and 2 seeds getting byes would be perfect. Mixed in with the BCS system of using AI and computers along with humans to determine who is ranked where. I think that's what they should do, in my opinion. And I think it'd be great. So, yeah, I went over the rankings. Now I'm just going to give you the main highlights, the big games this weekend. There's only 2 top 25 matchups, and those matchups are between Georgia and Missouri, the number 9 and 25 team, and the number 17 North Carolina Tar Heels, going to face the number 10 Miami Hurricanes. That'll be a good matchup. I'm going to be watching that game. That's a coin flip, to be honest. And that would be a huge win for North Carolina if they could get it. And if Miami gets that win, you got to move them up. I think you really do. Um, Again, a big game between Tulsa and Cincinnati got canceled. That's heartbreaking for Cincinnati fans and really any group of five fan because that basically resulted in Cincinnati's elimination. Um, that led to them moving down. Because I'm going to tell you right now, if Cincinnati won that game, Cincinnati would not have moved down. They missed the game. Tough luck. Um, now I know, I know that they were on bye last week, but I think now that the committee saw that that game against Tulsa was canceled, because I think it was announced before the playoff selection committee gave their votes and discussed who they had where. So I think that actually played into where they placed Cincinnati. They saw and said, hey, Cincinnati's not playing Tulsa the last week of the season before the conference championship games. Do they really even have a shot? Let's move them down, which I don't agree with, but I think that's where they were coming from on that end of the spectrum. But yeah, guys, I think that's really it for this episode of Jake's Takes. Really no big games here. Again, I believe most of the ACC teams aren't playing this week because they said they don't have to play that extra game. I think it mainly goes for Clemson and Notre Dame because Notre Dame is going to play against Wake Forest this week, but it was just kind of weird because we would have gone straight into the championship game while Clemson would have been on bye, which honestly I think we should have played the game against Wake Forest. No excuses because, Clemson had a lot of guys out against us, and, if we had just 1 week, if Clemson had a bye week when we didn't, I think that would have been more than fair. But then again, Clemson people, and really all college football people are saying that our win didn't count or matter because it was against DJU, even though he threw for 439 yards. And even if we don't beat Clemson, I think we're pretty safely in the playoff, unless something crazy happens. Fingers crossed. But yeah, I'm rambling. That's it here on Jake's Takes. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.